Greetings, Diocese of Olympia, and all those watching today. Over my nearly 10 years as your bishop, we have always had a high priority on multicultural ministry in this diocese. It has evolved in that time from the excellent work of Canon Jerry Shigaki, the Reverend Carla Robertson, and others, and the most recent work of Canon Ariane Davison. During Ariane's time, she and I have tried to envision this work in a way that is not so compartmentalized, even siloed. And so we're attempting a new way of doing this work, and I hope with this video to discuss it more with Ariane so you might understand more of the intent of the changes and the reality of them too. And so we might continue what will be an ongoing dialogue and learning for us all as we attempt to make this conscious and fairly monumental shift. It's a great delight to have Canon Ariane Davison with me. She's Canon for Multicultural Ministries. I just want to thank Ariane for the excellent leadership that she's given to this office, and I want us to use this time to talk about some of the changes that you and I have thought about and prayed about and envisioned over these last few years and that we're trying to embark on right now. And I think the first thing I would ask is just for you to share a little bit this kind of journey we've been on and where we find ourselves right now and what we're going to try.
We are moving what had formerly been called our anti-racism training, and now we're calling our intercultural competency training, into the consulting network where trained consultants will be offering both individual and ministry-wide training opportunities for people to grow in their intercultural competency.
You mentioned IDI. This is new. This is new, relatively new.
Mm-hmm.
Our staff's certainly been through it, and I find it immensely helpful. And we're kind of shifting to that as being or qualifying as anti-racism training.
Well, yeah, so the model is actually called the Intercultural Development Continuum, and that's this idea that all people are shaped by their experiences in terms of how they understand similarity and difference and how that's expressed interculturally. So some people who have less exposure to different cultures would have less development in terms of their intercultural competency, and people who've had a lot of exposure and done intentional work are going to have a lot more capacity and competency in working with people from other cultures. So the Intercultural Development Inventory is an assessment tool which can give people or individuals or groups feedback about their level of intercultural development, and then that awareness can be used to help guide what goals you might use to continue your intercultural development. So what we're going to be doing is offering individuals, say people in process for ordination, clergy, or other leaders in the diocese, the opportunity to receive individual debriefs where they will receive individual feedback about their intercultural development and assistance in goal setting around continued development. And we'll also offer opportunities for ministry groups to receive a group profile. So this might be in the congregational setting, maybe a group of people who are doing an outreach ministry with people who are unlike them in some way, perhaps people who are of a different socioeconomic class or people who are from a different ethnic or cultural background. This would be a tool for them to assess how they actually relate to people and function with people that are different than them, and then set goals as a group for how they can improve their functioning. So we're going to have these trainings available for different kinds of ministry configurations, maybe people who are teaching formation classes or working with youth from different backgrounds. Maybe it might be people that are engaging in an evangelism ministry in their local congregation and want to do a better job of interacting with people that aren't like them, who aren't already a part of the church. It might be for some people, intentional work around racism or sexual orientation and homophobia. Whatever the intercultural issue our communities are facing, we want to create opportunities for learning and growth, because we think actually that in order to get at the really difficult work of undoing our own racism and unconscious bias, or at least managing it, we actually have to start developmentally in the place that we are. And that might actually be for some people a lot farther back than beginning with racism.
But it's good that you put it that way, and I think this is right. I'd want you. It's not about right or wrong, or it's kind of a snapshot so that you can individually move yourself to a place of better understanding. Am I putting that
Yeah,
kind
that's
of right?
right.
I mean,
Better understanding, and I would say actual skills and practice.
Yeah.
So one of the things you said.
it's not a test, it's an
Right.
assessment.
Right, it's an assessment of where you are, and all the places we start out are okay, because we all start out actually in a monoculture of our family.
Right.
Until you go to eat dinner at somebody else's house or start going to school, you have no idea that people live differently than you. So everyone starts there, rather than rushing to moral judgment in a way that actually might be harder for people to learn how to be accepting, or even more to practice competent intercultural skills.
Right.
We may actually be making it harder for people to practice. And it's actually the exercise of those skills and practices in which people authentically and effectively interact with different folks. That's what we want our ministries to look like.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so to build up those skills, we actually have to suspend our sense that maybe our complicity in racism is shameful. It is shameful, but in order for us to get better, we have to actually hold that and then practice some new behaviors.
Right. Good. So we might as well be honest. There will be some people required to take this, but I'm wondering. I think that's true. Anybody who wants to could.
Yeah, absolutely. I would especially hope that people who are doing ministry with people that aren't like them, and congregations and groups that are doing ministries with people who aren't like them, which is what Jesus asked us to do, which is what the evangelists did and the early apostles, right? That they would avail themselves of actually this opportunity to make their ministry better. And so this is a great opportunity for groups of people to get to enrich their ministries by gaining self-awareness and practicing some new stuff.
Do we have the bandwidth to send to take this to the congregation?
Yes, and the venue for that is actually going to be, we have about 5 folks now that are part of the Congregational Consulting Network that are going to be able to offer these contextualized trainings for congregations.
Why do you feel this is a good move from what was traditionally anti-racism training that we've done to this kind of new way of saying this qualifies and we think it will be helpful?
Fundamentally, my social science training tells me that if we are so hung up on our ego that we can't even hear criticism about ourselves, that we're unlikely to hear it and we're unlikely to change our behavior. So on a fundamental level, I think that there's a skills piece for ministry and practitioner level of ministry that I care about. I also think that because our focus on anti-racism in this country has historically centered on an experience that emerged from the East Coast in the context of slavery, that our emphasis in anti-racism has been less on different ethnic and racial groups, ones that are honestly better represented here in the Pacific Northwest or the West Coast. Also, that approach has tended to not allow for intersectionality, this idea that's been emerging in philosophy and social science for a little while now, that all these different aspects of our identity interact to create our experience of who we are, and I would say as Christians, how we understand who God is and how we as the body of Christ embody that. And so a training model that really gets to that core of all the many ways we're similar and different, and helps us process maybe what our hangups might be around similarity and difference, is to me just a superior way. I also think that there's something about an assessment where you might get an individual result that is just a better way of getting somebody to be interested. And that's the kind of intervention in ministers and in ministries that as a leader, I want all of us to get to experience that reflection of who we are so that we can better use our gifts.
The anti-racism work imparted a lot of information.
Yes.
And tried to make a point, but it didn't always leave us with a lot of work that we could do. My experience with the training so far has been that you really get a sense of what you could do, some ways you can move.
Right. So for individuals, you might work with your debrief consultant to generate actual goals for yourself. So for me, that might have been when I started doing this work, engaging in my primary culture. So my being Chinese American and Anglo American, and figuring out what parts of that culture were important to who I am. For me, there were particular goals that I gleaned from doing the work, and so that's a great thing for individuals. Likewise, one of the things that I think is lovely about this congregational training model we're developing is that it's really guided by the congregations. So if a congregation comes to me and says, we want to do an intercultural competency training, my first question is going to be, what work are you doing now? Like, what is your intercultural work or question? And let's help equip you to do that more effectively. And that's really exciting to me.
I love that. It seems like this actually helps you with skill development.
Yeah, everyone I think who receives an individual debrief or takes a training opportunity is going to have to reflect on how they are living this out in that ministry or as a Christian. And that's the key shift here. It's that we're really moving from I'm giving you information about how to be less racist or what racism is to let's think about how your life might be transformed.
How can you move?
How can you move?
Yeah, right, good. Ariane, thank you for the work you've done to do that for us and to help us move closer to that. And you're still doing it and still will be doing it in a different way and without this title, for which we're very, very grateful. And thank you for being here today, too.
You're welcome.
Okay.